The sharp ping of a notification woke me from my daydream. Derek had stolen my Wi-Fi again, the third time since I'd been reborn into this second chance at life. I stared at the alert on my phone showing an unknown device had connected to my network, the familiar username Derek Gaming appearing just as it had in my previous existence. I took a deep breath and marched next door, the hallway's musty carpet smell bringing back memories of confrontations I'd had before my rebirth. My knuckles rapped against his door with more confidence than I'd ever managed in my past life. "Hey, Maya, what's up?" Derek asked with that same innocent smile that had fooled me for years. "You're using my Wi-Fi without permission," I said, pointing to his phone, where I could clearly see my network name MayaNet in his connections list. "What? No way," he stammered, quickly turning his phone away from my view. "Must be some kind of mistake." My stomach clenched as I recognized the familiar pattern. The denial, the quick dismissal. Just like before. Memories flooded back of how he'd manipulated me last time around, always taking what wasn't his, while making me feel crazy for noticing. "Let me see your phone," I demanded, surprised by my own boldness. Derek clutched his device closer, his eyes darting nervously. "Battery's about to die," he muttered, backing into his apartment. "I'll check my settings later and let you know." The door closed before I could argue. I trembled with frustration, but this time, something was different. This time, I knew what was happening. Back in my apartment, I logged into my router settings. The familiar tang of my cooling coffee filled my nostrils as I scrolled through the list of connected devices. There they were. Derek PS5, Derek laptop, and Derek phone, all currently active on my network. I changed my password immediately, choosing something completely random that I'd never used before. A small victory that made me smile. Let's see him explain this when his device is suddenly disconnected. 3 hours later, my phone buzzed with another notification. My fingers tensed around the screen as I read the alert. Somehow, impossibly, Derek PS5 had reconnected to my network. The clock on my kitchen wall ticked loudly in the silence of my apartment. How had he gotten my new password so quickly? This couldn't be coincidence or lucky guessing. Someone had to be helping him. I remembered how my data had been throttled in my previous life because of Derek's constant streaming and gaming. I wouldn't let history repeat itself. Not this time. My phone pinged again with an automated message from my service provider. "Unusual data usage detected on your account." I stared at the notification, a chill running down my spine despite the warm air blowing from my vents. Who was helping Derek, and what exactly was he doing with my connection that was using so much data so quickly? The next morning, I overheard Derek's voice through the thin walls of our apartment building. The radiator hissed and clanked as his words drifted clearly into my kitchen. "Yeah, I've been using her premium Wi-Fi for months now," he boasted to someone. "Why pay for your own when you can hack your neighbors, right?" I froze, my coffee mug suspended halfway to my lips. The rich aroma suddenly turned bitter in my nostrils. He wasn't just passively connecting to my network, he was actively bragging about stealing from me. "Saves me like $300 a year," he continued, his voice smug. "And she's got that unlimited data plan, so I can stream whatever I want." My fingers tightened around my mug. That explained why my internet had been so slow lately. In my previous life, I'd always wondered why my service got throttled despite paying for unlimited data. Now I knew. I needed answers, and I knew exactly who might have them. I texted Jen, Derek's girlfriend who'd claimed to be my friend in both lives. We met at the cafe around the corner that afternoon. "I know Derek's using my Wi-Fi," I said without preamble as we sat down. The cafe buzzed with conversation around us, the smell of fresh pastries normally comforting but now cloying in my anxious state. Jen's eyes widened for just a second before she composed herself. "What makes you think that?" "I can see his device is connected to my network," I explained. "And somehow, he got my new password after I changed it yesterday." Jen stared at her latte, her finger tracing nervous circles on the ceramic mug. The silence stretched between us until she finally sighed. "Look, he just asked me for the password once," she mumbled. "Said his internet was down and he needed to submit a job application." I leaned forward. Once? Then how did he get my new password yesterday? Her cheeks flushed red. Okay, fine. I've been giving him your passwords for months. He saw me watch you type it in once when I was at your place, and then he just kept asking for updates whenever you changed it. The betrayal stung worse than I expected. In my previous life, I'd never discovered this layer of deception. I'd always assumed Derek was just good with technology. Why would you do that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He's my boyfriend, Maya, she replied with a shrug. And it's just internet. It's not like it's hurting anyone. I wanted to scream that it was hurting me, my wallet, my trust, my peace of mind. Instead, I took a deep breath and forced myself to smile. You're right, I said, shocking myself with how calm I sounded. It's not a big deal. Jen's relief was palpable as her shoulders relaxed. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so glad you understand. I'll tell him to ease up on the downloads. Don't bother, I said. What are friends for, right? The wooden chair creaked beneath me as I shifted, mentally calculating my next move. This betrayal wouldn't stand, not in this lifetime. Back home, I called my internet service provider. The hold music grated on my nerves as I waited, but I refused to hang up. I'd like to upgrade to your business package, I told the representative when she finally answered. The one with guest network capabilities. That's quite a bit more expensive than your current plan, she warned. It'll be worth it, I assured her, a plan crystallizing in my mind. The technician arrived 2 days later, installing the new equipment and showing me how to set up separate networks, one secure, one for guests. The guest network can have bandwidth limits, he explained, his voice fading into the background as I plotted. I named my new secure network something completely different and hid its broadcast, making it invisible to anyone searching for Wi-Fi signals. Then I created the guest network with the same name as my old one, MayaNet, and set it with reasonable but limited bandwidth. My fingers trembled with anticipation as I sent Jen a text. Had to reset my router. The new password is summer 2023. I wrote, knowing she'd pass it straight to Derek. Within minutes, I saw Derek phone connect to my guest network. Perfect. For the next week, I watched as Derek continued his routine, completely unaware he was now on a network I specifically designed to monitor. The scratchy fabric of my secondhand office chair rubbed against my legs as I logged his usage patterns, each data point confirming what I suspected. He was consuming massive amounts of bandwidth. Your guest network usage report is ready, read the automated email from my ISP after the first week. I clicked the link, my eyes widening at the numbers. Derek wasn't just streaming movies or playing games. The pattern showed consistent heavy uploading too. I remembered in my previous life how I'd received warnings about my internet usage, but could never figure out why. The memory made my jaw clench. What exactly was he doing? The answer came 3 days later when I overheard another of his conversations through our shared wall. Yeah, man, I've got the server running 24/7, Derek was saying. $5 a month for access. Way cheaper than those official gaming servers. My blood boiled. He was running a business using my internet, charging others for access to a server he was hosting through my connection. That evening, while Derek was out, I noticed something new in the hallway between our apartments. The dim overhead light illuminated a small device plugged into the wall outlet, a Wi-Fi extender, positioned perfectly to boost the signal between our units. I crouched down to examine it, my fingertips brushing against the wall, where he'd drilled a small hole to mount the device more permanently. The rough, damaged drywall scraped against my skin. He'd damaged building property to better steal from me. The audacity made me lightheaded with anger. When he returned, I confronted him in the hallway, pointing at the extender. What is this? Oh, that? Derek said, his expression innocently confused. That's just to boost the Wi-Fi signal. The building manager said it was fine. I never gave permission for this, I insisted. Why would you need to? He asked, his tone making me sound irrational. It's for the building's internet. We don't have building internet, I said through gritted teeth. That's connected to my private network. Before Derek could respond, Jen appeared behind him. The manager definitely approved it, she chimed in. I was there when Derek asked. They were both lying to my face again. In my previous life, I might have backed down, confused and uncertain. Not this time. I'll confirm that with the manager tomorrow, I said, walking away before they could see how furious I really was. Back in my apartment, I called my ISP again, this time with an unusual request. I'd like to transfer the billing name on my guest network account, I explained to the representative. To whom? She asked. Derek Thompson, apartment 4B, I replied, my heart racing with vindictive glee. But I'd like to keep the payment method the same for one more month. The representative sounded confused but agreed to the arrangement. He'll need to confirm the transfer, she warned. Oh, he will, I assured her, knowing Derek would leap at the chance to have an internet account in his name without having to pay for it. At least not yet. The trap was set. Now all I needed was to see the look on his face when he realized what I'd done. But there was one more thing I needed to confirm. I logged into my router's admin panel and checked the detailed usage report for the guest network. The data confirmed my suspicions. Derek wasn't just running a gaming server. The traffic patterns showed massive downloads of files that matched the signature of pirated content, followed by multiple uploads to different destinations. My stomach lurched. He was using my internet connection for potentially illegal activities, all while I paid the bill and bore the liability. A notification popped up on my phone, another alert about unusual data usage. But this time, instead of making me anxious, it made me smile. Every notification was now evidence of what Derek was doing. The wall clock ticked past midnight as I finalized my plan. In just a few weeks, the billing cycle would end, and Derek would receive his first bill for a business-class internet connection with massive overage charges from his server. I wondered how he'd explain that to his gaming customers when his service got cut off for non-payment. The next morning, I woke to the sound of drilling. The harsh mechanical whine pierced through my bedroom wall, jolting me from sleep. My pillow vibrated against my cheek with each pulse of the drill. I stumbled into the hallway, hair disheveled and eyes barely open, to find Derek installing a second Wi-Fi extender. This one was positioned even closer to my apartment, mounted on the wall directly beside my door. What are you doing? I demanded, my voice still rough with sleep. Derek barely glanced at me. Improving the signal, he said casually, as if he had every right to modify the building's common areas. The first extender wasn't quite reaching my bedroom. I stared at the fresh holes he'd drilled into the wall, tiny flecks of plaster dust gathering on the carpet below. You can't just damage property like this. Relax, he said, with that dismissive wave I'd grown to hate across 2 lifetimes. It benefits everyone. The signal's way stronger now. My hands clenched into fists. He meant his signal was stronger, the connection he was stealing from me. Did the building manager approve this installation too? I challenged. Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. Of course, you can ask him yourself. I didn't need to ask, I already knew the answer. The building manager, Mr. Rodriguez, was away visiting family in Florida. I'd signed for a package for him just yesterday. I will, I replied, forcing a smile. Right now, actually. Panic flashed across Derek's face before he controlled it. He's not in the office today. Something about a family emergency. The lie slipped so easily from his lips. I wondered how many times he'd lied to me in my previous life, too. Lies I'd accepted without question. I retreated to my apartment without another word, seething. The door closed behind me with a soft click that belied my churning anger. 10 minutes later, my phone pinged with an alert from my router. Derek's gaming server was experiencing unusually high traffic. The screen glowed with alarming red text, indicating a data usage spike that exceeded even his typical excessive consumption. I launched my monitoring software to investigate further, the familiar scent of my lavender diffuser doing little to calm my aggravation. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Derek wasn't just running a small gaming server for friends. The connection patterns showed systematic distribution of content to dozens of IP addresses. He had created a full-fledged subscription service with paying customers, all running through my internet connection. In my previous life, I died before completing my cybersecurity degree. I'd always had a talent for it, but never got to use my skills professionally. Being reborn had given me a second chance, and I'd finished my education. Now those skills were proving unexpectedly useful. I documented everything meticulously: connection times, data transfers, recurring IP addresses. If Derek was distributing pirated content through my network, I wanted irrefutable evidence. A knock at my door interrupted my investigation. I tensed, expecting another confrontation with Derek, but it was Jen who stood in my hallway. "Hey," she said, forcing brightness into her voice. "I was wondering if your internet is working okay. Derek's been complaining that the signal drops sometimes." The audacity stunned me momentarily. She was checking if the service they were stealing was functioning to their satisfaction. "It's working fine for me," I replied coolly, "though it does slow down whenever Derek's devices connect." Jen's smile faltered. "Oh, I thought you were okay with him using it occasionally." "Occasionally," I echoed. "He's running a server, Jen. Do you have any idea how much data that uses?" Her eyes widened in what appeared to be genuine surprise. "A server?" "No, he just streams movies and plays games online." Either she was an excellent actress or Derek hadn't told her the full extent of his operation. I decided to test which it was. "You might want to ask him about the gaming server he's charging people to access," I suggested. "And maybe about the extender he just installed without permission." Jen's cheeks flushed. "I'm sure there's some misunderstanding," she stammered. "Derek wouldn't—" "Wouldn't what? Lie, steal, damage property?" I interrupted, my patience finally snapping. "He's been doing all three." Jen took a step back, her expression hardening. "You're just being paranoid. We're friends, Maya. Friends share things." "Friends ask permission," I countered. "Friends don't drill holes in walls or run businesses using resources they don't pay for." "It's just internet," she insisted, her voice rising. "It's not like you're using all your data anyway." The dismissal of my concerns echoed across both my lifetimes. Always the same argument. It wasn't a big deal. I was overreacting. I should be more generous. But something in me had fundamentally changed after being reborn. I no longer felt obligated to accept mistreatment. "You should go," I said quietly. After she left, I called my ISP again. The phone's plastic case grew warm against my ear as I waded through the hold music. "I'd like to make some changes to my account," I explained to the representative when she finally answered. "Of course, Miss Carter," she replied. "What can we help you with today?" "I want to confirm that the billing name transfer for the guest network is proceeding as planned," I said. "Yes, it's all set. Mr. Thompson confirmed the transfer yesterday. Starting next billing cycle, he'll receive the invoices directly." I smiled at the confirmation. Derek had accepted the transfer without hesitation, just as I'd predicted. He probably thought he was getting free internet legitimately somehow. "Perfect," I said. "And could you tell me how much the current usage would cost if billed today?" The representative went quiet for a moment, presumably checking the figures. The sound of her typing created a rhythmic backdrop to my anticipation. "With the business package rates and the current overage charges," she finally replied, "the bill currently stands at $879.42. I nearly choked. "That much for 3 weeks of usage?" "The guest network has exceeded the business tier data cap by several terabytes," she explained. "Those overage charges add up quickly, especially with consistent high bandwidth usage during peak hours." My mouth went dry. No wonder Derek had been so eager to use my connection. His activities would have cost him a fortune on his own plan. "Thank you," I managed to say. "That's all I needed to know." Later that afternoon, I discovered the third betrayal. The building's maintenance request system had emailed all residents about upcoming repairs. Among them was an entry that made my heart pound. "Hallway electrical outlet repair. Damage from unauthorized equipment installation, 4th floor." The unmistakable scent of fresh paint wafted through the hallway when I stepped out to investigate. Mr. Rodriguez had returned early and discovered Derek's handiwork. The Wi-Fi extender was gone, but the damage remained. Holes in the wall, scuff marks on the paint, and a cracked outlet cover. As I studied the damage, the elevator doors opened and Mr. Rodriguez stepped out carrying a toolbox. "Miss Carter," he greeted me with a nod. "I was just coming to check if your apartment had any damage as well." "Damage?" I asked innocently. "From whatever your neighbor was doing," he explained, gesturing to the wall. "Found his device plugged in here, drawing way too much power. Nearly caused an electrical short? I feigned surprise. That's terrible. I had no idea. He claimed he had permission, Mr. Rodriguez continued, his weathered face creasing with annoyance. Said you and I both approved it. My heart skipped. I never approved anything. That's what I figured, he nodded. I've issued him a warning. One more lease violation and he'll face eviction. After Mr. Rodriguez left to make his repairs, I returned to my apartment with a strange sense of calm. Everything was falling into place without me having to push it. Derek was digging his own grave. I pulled out my phone and took pictures of the wall damage. As I zoomed in on one of the drill holes, a notification appeared, another alert from my router. The traffic spike was even higher than before. Back at my computer, I discovered Derek had redirected his server to use even more bandwidth, apparently unconcerned about the consumption now that he believed the account was in his name. I almost felt sorry for him, almost. The calendar on my wall showed just 3 days until the billing cycle ended. 3 days until Derek received his first bill. The red circled date seemed to pulse with promise. My phone buzzed with a text from Jen. Can we talk? Derek's acting weird about something. I didn't respond. Instead, I drafted an email to my old employer from my previous life, a cybersecurity firm that had been impressed with my work before my untimely death. In this new life, I'd finished my degree but hadn't approached them yet. It was time to restart my career properly. My fingers hovered over the send button as a final alert appeared on my screen. Derek's server was now distributing content to over 100 unique IP addresses. Whatever he was doing, he was scaling up rapidly. The ticking time bomb I'd set was about to explode in his face, and he was only making the blast radius bigger. The morning air felt different somehow, filled with possibility. I stretched in my desk chair, rubbing my eyes after another late night of monitoring Derek's activities. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that in this second life of mine, I'd become more than just the quiet neighbor with the premium Wi-Fi connection. I was a cybersecurity specialist now. In my previous life, I'd died in a car accident just months before completing my degree. Being reborn gave me the chance to finish what I'd started, and I'd excelled beyond even my own expectations. The certification papers on my wall weren't just decorations, they were weapons in my current battle. My laptop chimed with a new alert. The sharp electronic tone cut through my apartment, making me flinch. Derek's server was downloading another massive file, something that required even more bandwidth than his usual activities. Curious, I dug deeper into the traffic analysis. The metallic taste of my energy drink lingered on my tongue as I scrolled through the data logs. What I found made me sit up straight. Derek wasn't just running a gaming server or streaming movies. The file signatures matched known pirated software, expensive design programs, video editing suites, and business applications. And he wasn't just downloading them, he was modifying the files and selling access to cracked versions online. You've got to be kidding me, I whispered to the empty room. This wasn't just theft of my internet service anymore. This was potentially criminal activity, all linked to my IP address. In my previous life, I'd never discovered this. I'd just suffered the consequences of slower internet and higher bills without understanding why. My phone buzzed with a text from my former employer, now my current employer again in this life. Contract approved. Signing bonus will be deposited today. Start date confirmed for next month. I grinned at the screen. The job I'd lost to death in my previous life was mine again, and with better terms. The signing bonus alone would cover 3 months of rent, giving me the financial freedom I needed for what came next. I needed to document everything before making my final move. I spent the next 2 hours capturing screenshots, recording network traffic, and saving log files that showed Derek's activities in irrefutable detail. The soft click of my keyboard created a soothing rhythm as I worked methodically. Just as I finished, a knock at my door interrupted my concentration. I saved my final file and went to answer. Jen stood in the hallway, looking uncomfortable. Have you seen Derek? He's not answering his phone. Haven't seen him since yesterday, I replied truthfully. Everything okay? She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. We had a fight about the internet thing. I asked him about the server you mentioned, and he got really defensive. I leaned against my doorframe. What did he say? He said it wasn't my business, she admitted, her eyes downcast. Then he started accusing me of taking your side. Are you? I asked quietly. Jen looked up, genuine conflict in her expression. I don't know. I didn't think it was a big deal at first, but now, I don't know what he's doing. He's been so secretive lately. For the first time, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. Maybe she wasn't as complicit as I'd thought. I'm sure he'll turn up, I said. Let me know if you hear from him. After she left, I returned to my laptop. I needed to create a backup of my evidence somewhere Derek couldn't access it. The ceiling fan whirred softly overhead, circulating the scent of my vanilla candle as I worked. My thumb drive was nearly full when a new alert appeared on my screen. Derek was accessing my network again, but from a new device. I frowned, checking the identifier. Derek Tablet had connected to my guest network. I quickly traced the connection. He wasn't in his apartment. The signal was coming from the building's laundry room in the basement. Was he hiding down there to use the internet? A plan formed in my mind. I needed to make sure Jen understood exactly what Derek had been doing, but she might not believe me if I just told her. She needed to discover it herself. I transferred a copy of my evidence to my old phone, the one with the cracked screen that I'd kept as a backup. Then, I deliberately left the phone unlocked with the evidence file open on the screen. The final touch was setting a new lock code, 0714, Derek's birthday, which I knew Jen knew. The laundry room smelled of detergent and fabric softener, the humid air clinging to my skin as I entered. Derek sat in the corner, his tablet propped on the folding table. He looked up, startled when he saw me. Just doing some laundry, I said casually, dropping my empty basket next to a machine. Same, he muttered, though he had no laundry visible. I pretended to search my pockets. Shoot, forgot my phone. Could I borrow yours to check the time? It's 4:30, he said without offering his device. Thanks. I turned to leave, then gasped dramatically. Oh no, I think I left my phone somewhere. Have you seen it? It has a cracked screen. Derek shook his head quickly. Too quickly. His eyes darted to his backpack on the floor beside him. If you find it, let me know, I said, then left without doing any laundry. Back in my apartment, I waited. The walls seemed to close in as minutes stretched into an hour. Had my plan failed? Did Derek suspect something? Finally, my doorbell rang. Jen stood there, my old phone clutched in her hand. Her eyes were red, her mascara smudged. I found this, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, in Derek's backpack. I took the phone, noting that it had been unlocked. The evidence files were still open on the screen. Did you look at it? I asked gently. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I didn't understand everything, but he's selling stuff, isn't he? Illegal stuff, using your internet. Yes, I confirmed, he is. And the server? It's not just for gaming, he's hosting pirated software and charging people to download it. Jen wiped at her eyes. I had no idea, I swear, Maya. I thought he was just saving money on internet service. The genuine shock in her face convinced me. She hadn't known the full extent of Derek's activities. I believe you, I said. What are you going to do? She asked. I considered my options. The billing transfer was already in motion. The evidence was secure. Now, I just needed to wait. Nothing, I replied, for now. Jen looked confused. You're not going to confront him? I don't need to, I explained. He'll face consequences soon enough. Later that evening, I received an email notification that made me smile. My signing bonus had been deposited, a substantial sum that represented freedom and possibilities. In my previous life, I'd never lived to see this financial security. I transferred enough money to cover my rent for the next 3 months, then set aside another portion for what would come next. Moving expenses, I labeled it. The thought made me pause. Was I really planning to move? I hadn't consciously decided yet, but some part of me had already recognized that I'd need a fresh start after what was about to happen. My phone pinged with another alert from my router. Derek was back in his apartment, his devices reconnected to my guest network. The data usage was climbing again as his server resumed operations. I leaned back in my chair, a strange calm settling over me. The confrontation was coming, but not on his terms. Not like in my previous life where I'd always been on the defensive, always reacting to his manipulations. This time, I was orchestrating everything. A final notification appeared on my screen. The billing cycle would end at midnight. In just a few hours, the ISP would generate Derek's first bill, complete with all the overage charges his activities had accumulated. The ticking of my wall clock seemed louder suddenly, each second bringing me closer to vindication. I imagined Derek's face when he opened that bill, the moment he realized the trap he'd walked into. Outside my window, thunder rumbled in the distance. A storm was coming, both literally and figuratively. I breathed in the charged air, feeling the electricity of anticipation on my skin. Tomorrow would change everything. My phone buzzed with a text from the ISP. Billing name transfer complete. Account hash 4829 now registered to Derek Thompson. It was official, the clock had run out. I closed my laptop and stood by the window, watching lightning illuminate the darkening sky. In the reflection of the glass, I barely recognized myself. The timid woman who had let Derek walk all over her in my previous life was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who wouldn't be a victim again. The first heavy raindrops began to hit my window, creating a symphony of pattering sounds that matched my quickening heartbeat. I wondered if Derek had any idea what was coming for him, or if he was still sitting in his apartment, blissfully unaware that his scheme was about to collapse around him. Either way, I would be ready. 3 days passed before the storm broke. I was making coffee when I heard the commotion. Derek's voice echoed through the hallway, high-pitched and panicked. "This has to be a mistake. $879 for internet?" I smiled into my coffee mug, the rich aroma filling my nostrils as I took a slow, deliberate sip. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived. My doorbell rang moments later. I counted to 10 before answering, schooling my expression into one of mild confusion. Derek stood there wild-eyed, clutching a piece of paper that trembled in his hand. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. "Did you do this?" he demanded, thrusting the bill toward me. I glanced at it casually. "Do what?" "This." He jabbed his finger at the paper. "My name is on your internet bill, and it's almost $900. I frowned, taking the bill from him to examine it more closely. "That's strange. Why would your name be on my account?" "That's what I'm asking you." His voice cracked with stress. "The ISP says I approved a billing transfer, but I never did that." I handed the bill back to him, maintaining my puzzled expression. "Actually, you did. Remember when they called you about accepting a network transfer? You said yes." The blood drained from his face as realization dawned. "That was for billing? They said something about account access." "Account access includes billing responsibility," I explained calmly. "It's all in the terms and conditions." Derek's eyes narrowed as his initial panic gave way to suspicion. "You planned this. You tricked me." "I didn't trick you into anything," I replied, my voice steady. "I certainly didn't trick you into using my internet without permission for months, or installing equipment in the hallway without approval, or running a server through my connection." "I'm not paying this," he shouted, his voice echoing down the hallway. "You can't make me pay for your fancy business internet package." The door across the hall opened, and Mrs. Patel peered out curiously. 2 more neighbors emerged from their apartments, drawn by the commotion. "What's going on?" asked Mr. Chen from 4C. Derek spun around, suddenly aware of our audience. His shoulders tensed as he realized he'd created a scene. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. "Maya set me up," he declared to the gathering crowd. "She's trying to make me pay her internet bill." I leaned against my door frame, the cool metal pressing against my skin. "Derek," I said quietly, "maybe you should think carefully about what you're saying." "What I'm saying?" he sputtered. "I'm saying you're trying to scam me." "So you never used my internet?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Never installed equipment to boost the signal? Never ran a server using my connection?" Derek faltered, aware of the neighbors watching with growing interest. The scent of someone's cooking, garlic and onions, wafted through the hallway as silence stretched between us. "That's different," he finally muttered. "Everyone borrows Wi-Fi sometimes?" Borrows? Mrs. Patel repeated, her tone sharp. Without asking. That's not borrowing, young man. That's stealing. Derek's face flushed again. I didn't. It wasn't. He struggled to find words that wouldn't incriminate him further. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Would you like me to play the recording? What recording? He demanded, eyes widening. I tapped my screen and Derek's voice filled the hallway. Yeah, I've been using her premium Wi-Fi for months now. Why pay for your own when you can hack your neighbors, right? Saves me like $300 a year. The hallway fell silent except for the sound of Mrs. Patel's disappointed tongue click. Derek lunged toward me, reaching for my phone. Give me that! You can't record me without permission! I stepped back into my apartment as Mr. Chen moved forward, placing himself between us. Hey, back off, man. This is none of your business, Derek snapped at him. You made it everyone's business when you started yelling in the hallway, Mr. Chen replied calmly. The elevator dinged, and Mr. Rodriguez stepped out, toolbox in hand. He surveyed the scene with wary eyes. What's happening here? He asked, his gaze landing on Derek. Perfect timing, I said, gesturing toward Derek. He was just explaining why he installed unauthorized equipment in the hallway. Mr. Rodriguez's expression hardened. We've already discussed this, Mr. Thompson. That was your first lease violation. Derek's anger crumbled into panic. Wait, I can explain. He was also explaining how he's been stealing Miss Carter's internet service, Mrs. Patel added helpfully. We all heard the recording. And running some kind of server, Mr. Chen chimed in. The hallway filled with the earthy smell of Mr. Rodriguez's aftershave as he stepped closer to Derek. Is this true? Derek's shoulders slumped. The fight seemed to drain out of him as he realized how completely he'd been exposed. It's not how it sounds, he mumbled. It sounds like theft of services and property damage, Mr. Rodriguez said. That's 2 lease violations now. Derek's eyes darted around the hallway, searching for sympathy but finding none. The neighbors who had gathered were watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright disapproval. What about the bill? He asked, his voice small. I can't pay this. That's between you and the ISP now, I replied. The account is in your name. But my credit will be ruined. I shrugged, feeling a flicker of satisfaction. Actions have consequences. The elevator dinged again and Jen stepped out. She froze when she saw the gathered crowd, her eyes locking with Derek's. What's going on? She asked, approaching cautiously. Derek thrust the bill at her. Did you know about this? Were you in on it? Jen looked at the paper, then at me, then back at Derek. In on what? Maya tricked me. She transferred the internet bill to my name, and now they want almost $900. Jen took the bill from him, examining it with a frown. This is for the internet you've been using to run your server? Derek's face paled. How do you know about that? I saw the evidence, she said quietly. All those pirated programs you've been selling. The hallway grew even more silent. The gravity of Derek's actions seemed to weigh on everyone. You've been selling pirated software using Miss Carter's internet connection? Mr. Rodriguez asked, his voice dangerously low. Derek said nothing, but his silence was answer enough. That's 3 violations, Mr. Rodriguez said. Property damage, theft of services, and illegal activity conducted on the premises. He pulled out his phone and began typing. I'll need you to vacate the apartment within 30 days. You can't evict me, Derek protested, the words catching in his throat. Read your lease agreement, Mr. Rodriguez replied without looking up from his phone. Section 8, paragraph 3. The triumph I felt wasn't as sweet as I'd imagined. Instead, I experienced a strange sense of calm as justice unfolded naturally. The trap I'd set had worked perfectly, but Derek had been the architect of his own downfall. Jen touched Derek's arm. Let's go inside and talk about this. He jerked away from her. Did you help her? Is that why you asked about the server? I asked because I was concerned, Jen replied, hurt evident in her voice. I had no idea what you were doing until I saw the evidence. What evidence? He demanded. On Maya's old phone, she admitted. The one you took from the laundry room. Derek's eyes widened with fresh realization. You planted that phone. You wanted her to find it. I nodded, not bothering to deny it. I did. You set me up, he repeated, but the accusation had lost its edge. Now he just sounded defeated. No, Derek, I said firmly. You set yourself up the moment you decided to steal from me. I just made sure there would be consequences this time. The neighbors began to disperse, the drama having reached its natural conclusion. Mr. Rodriguez made a final note on his phone before turning to leave. 30 days, Mr. Thompson, he reminded Derek, and you'll be responsible for the cost of repairs to the hallway. Derek stood alone in the hallway now, the bill crumpled in his fist, Jen having retreated into their apartment. The scent of someone's dinner, now slightly burned, lingered in the air. What am I supposed to do? He asked, his voice barely audible. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Pay your bills, I suggested. Find a new place to live. Stop stealing from people who trust you. I can't afford this bill, he insisted, shaking the crumpled paper. Then you should have thought about that before using services you didn't pay for, I replied, my sympathy evaporating. The world doesn't owe you free internet, Derek. It doesn't owe you anything. He stared at me, something like respect reluctantly dawning in his eyes. You're different now. You used to let things go. I died letting things go, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Derek frowned in confusion. What? I shook my head. Nothing, just a figure of speech. I stepped back into my apartment, my hand on the door. Good luck, Derek. I hope you learned something from this. And as I closed the door, I caught a glimpse of his expression, lost, bewildered, as if he couldn't quite comprehend how completely his actions had backfired. Inside my apartment, I leaned against the door and exhaled slowly. The confrontation I'd been anticipating for weeks was over, and it had gone better than I could have hoped. My phone buzzed with a text from Jen. Can we talk tomorrow? I'm moving out. Need advice. I replied with a simple yes, then set my phone aside. The evening light filtered through my curtains, casting long shadows across my floor. The wall clock ticked steadily, marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I'd won this round, but the victory felt different than I'd expected. Instead of elation, I felt a quiet certainty that I'd done what was necessary, not just for revenge, but for justice. In my previous life, I'd let Derek walk all over me until the very end. In this life, I'd made sure he understood that actions have consequences. And that was enough. The knock at my door came exactly 1 week later. I'd been expecting it. The inevitability of it had hung in the air like the scent of an approaching storm. I peered through the peephole to see Derek and Jen standing side by side, though noticeably farther apart than they used to stand. I opened the door but remained in the threshold, creating a barrier between us. Yes. Derek looked terrible. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usual confident posture had collapsed into something hunched and desperate. Jen didn't look much better, her face drawn with stress. Can we come in? Derek asked, his voice hoarse. I don't think that's necessary, I replied coolly. Whatever you need to say, you can say it here. Derek glanced nervously at the hallway, clearly worried about another public confrontation. The murmur of a television drifted from a neighboring apartment, reminding us all that these walls had ears. Please, Maya, Jen pleaded. Just 5 minutes. Something in her expression, genuine remorse perhaps, softened my resolve. I stepped aside, allowing them to enter. The sharp scent of Derek's cologne, too much of it, as if he'd tried to mask his fear with fragrance, filled my small living room. I gestured toward the couch but remained standing. 5 minutes, I agreed. They sat close together on the edge of the couch like children called to the principal's office. Derek cleared his throat twice before speaking. I'm here about the bill, he began, pulling a folded paper from his pocket, the same bill, now worn and creased from being handled repeatedly. I thought we settled this, I said. The account is in your name. You used the service. You pay the bill. I can't, he said, desperation edging into his voice. I really can't, Maya. They're threatening to send it to collections. My credit score has already dropped 80 points. That's unfortunate, I replied, unmoved. Look, Derek continued, leaning forward, I know I messed up. What I did was wrong, and I get that now, but this bill will ruin me financially. Jen nodded beside him. We've already lost the apartment. Mr. Rodriguez won't even give Derek a reference for a new place. I crossed my arms. And this concerns me how exactly? We want to make it right, Derek said quickly. We'll pay you back for all the months I used your Wi-Fi. With interest, even. For the first time, I felt a flicker of curiosity. How much do you think that would be? Derek and Jen exchanged glances. We figured about $50 a month for what? 6 months? That's 300 plus maybe 50 more for interest. So 350? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a checkbook. We can write you a check right now. I actually laughed. The sound startled all three of us, bouncing off the walls of my apartment like something foreign and unexpected. $350, I repeated, shaking my head. Is that not enough? Derek asked, pen poised over the check. I walked to my desk and returned with a calculator. The plastic keys clicked satisfyingly under my fingers as I began to tally. Let's see, I said. Premium internet service for 6 months at $99 per month is $594. The bandwidth overage charges from your gaming server for those months totals approximately $420. The cost of the new router I had to purchase when you installed that extender that interfered with my signal, $179. Derek's face paled as the numbers grew. Then there's the business level upgrade I needed to create a separate guest network, an additional $60 per month for 3 months. That's $180. Oh, and let's not forget the electricity used by your server running through my connection, conservatively estimated at $15 per month, so another $90. I turned the calculator to show them the total. $1,463. Derek's mouth opened and closed without sound. Jen stared at the number in disbelief. That's just for this lifetime, I added, the words slipping out before I could stop them. This lifetime? Jen repeated, confusion creasing her brow. I waved my hand dismissively. This time, this instance. The radiator in the corner hissed to life, filling the awkward silence with its rhythmic clanking. The warm air carried the scent of dust burning off the rarely used heating element. We don't have that kind of money, Derek finally said. I've already sold my gaming equipment to cover the security deposit we lost. Then I guess you shouldn't have stolen from me, I replied simply. Derek's expression hardened. You did this on purpose. You could have just confronted me directly instead of setting this whole trap. I did confront you directly, I reminded him. Several times. You denied everything and kept stealing. It was just internet, he exploded, standing up suddenly. Everyone shares internet. It's not like I stole actual money from you. I remained perfectly still, my voice deadly calm. What do you think paid for that internet, Derek? Magic? Goodwill? I worked for that money. I earned it. You took it without asking, without contributing, without so much as a thank you. Derek sank back down, deflated. I didn't think of it that way. You never do, I said quietly. You never think about how your actions affect others. Jen reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Maya, please. We're really sorry. Isn't there anything we can do to fix this? I studied her face, the genuine regret in her eyes, the trembling of her lower lip. In my previous life, we had been friends, real friends, before Derek came between us. Before I died alone with no one checking on me for days. You could pay the bill, I suggested. We told you we don't have the money, Derek repeated, frustration evident in his voice. Then I can't help you, I said simply. So that's it? Derek asked incredulously. You're just going to let my credit be destroyed? You know what this means, right? I won't be able to rent another decent apartment. I might lose my job if they run a credit check. All over some internet usage? I walked to the window, gazing out at the street below. A moving truck was parked outside our building, Derek's presumably. The sight of it crystallized something inside me. In this life, I said, turning back to face them, I don't give second chances to those who never deserved the first. Derek flinched as if I'd slapped him. What is that supposed to mean? It means no, I clarified. I won't help you get out of this. You made your choices, Derek. Now you live with the consequences. You're being vindictive, he accused, anger flaring in his eyes. And maybe, I agreed, or maybe I'm just being fair. Jen stood, tugging at Derek's arm. We should go. Thank you for at least listening. Derek shook her off. So that's it? After everything we've been through, you're just going to watch us crash and burn? The question caught me off guard. Everything we've been through? We were never friends, Derek. You were my neighbor who took advantage of me. That's it. We were more than that, he insisted. We were. He trailed off, unable to find the words to describe a relationship that had only ever been transactional in his mind. We were nothing, I finished for him, and now we're less than that. The harsh truth hung between us, almost visible in the afternoon light that streamed through my windows. The dust particles dancing in the sunbeams seemed to pause, waiting for someone to break the silence. Your 5 minutes are up, I said finally, moving toward the door to show them out. Derek stood, his shoulders slumped in defeat. You've changed, Maya. You used to be nicer. I used to be a doormat, I corrected him. I'm not anymore. As they shuffled toward the exit, Jen turned back. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I didn't understand what he was doing. I nodded, acknowledging her apology without accepting it. Take care of yourself, Jen. What does that mean? Derek asked suspiciously. It means she deserves better than someone who manipulates her into helping him steal, I replied. Derek's face flushed with anger. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know enough, I said, holding the door open for them. As they stepped into the hallway, Derek turned back for one final attempt. Please, Maya, I'm begging you. Help me fix this. The desperation in his eyes would have moved me once. In my previous life, I might have caved, might have found a way to help him despite everything. But that Maya was gone, reborn into someone stronger. Goodbye, Derek, I said, and closed the door firmly. Through the door, I heard their muffled argument begin immediately. Jen's voice rising in frustration, Derek's defensive responses. Their footsteps receded down the hallway, their voices fading with distance. I returned to my window and watched as they emerged from the building below. Derek gestured wildly as they argued beside the moving truck. After a few minutes, Jen shook her head and walked away, leaving Derek alone beside his half-loaded possessions. A strange sense of closure washed over me. This confrontation had been inevitable, the final act in a play that had spanned 2 lifetimes. In the first, I had been a victim. In the second, I had reclaimed my power. My phone buzzed with an email notification. The job offer from the ISP's cybersecurity division had been formalized. They were impressed with how thoroughly I had documented the theft of service. Apparently, what Derek had been doing was more common than I realized, and the company wanted to develop better systems to detect and prevent it. I smiled at the irony. Derek's actions had inadvertently launched me into a promising new career path. Outside, the moving truck pulled away from the curb. I watched until it disappeared around the corner, taking Derek and his problems with him. The apartment felt different somehow, lighter, as if a heavy weight had been lifted. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, warming the space in a way it never had before. I breathed deeply, savoring the moment. In my previous life, I had never found the courage to stand up for myself, to demand the respect I deserved. I had died with that regret, that sense of unfinished business. This time, I had set things right. My phone buzzed again. A text from Mr. Rodriguez. New tenant moving in next week. Good reference, no red flags. Thought you'd want to know. I smiled, already looking forward to a fresh start with my new neighbor. Perhaps in this life, things would be different.